Hello everyone, my name is Redbeard and today we're going to be looking at the High Elf Sea Patrol, aka the last High Elf DLC that we need. And of course that means it will be led by Sea Lord Eataine. This I alluded to in my Dark Elf videos and my Slaanesh videos, which are the other two races I would like to see in this next DLC. Check top right. Or possibly I will have the playlist linked at the end of the video and or description. So, before we dive into all the missing characters and units, we gotta lay the groundwork for the FLC rework the Ezer High Elves need. They don't need an ogre hall necessarily, but their mechanics currently are boring, fallen behind, and lacking the flavor that is necessary, of which I have three major points, two of which are pulled directly from the Chaos Dwarf mechanics, believe it or not, one of which is Ulthuan based, and two are sea themed, all of which can more or less be added by mods. Images of said mods will be on screen. Check the description of the video for links. Now, the Pheonix Court of Ulthuan should be a mechanic available to all High Elves. It would essentially be a reskin of the Chaos Dwarf Tower of Zar system. You can download the mod in the workshop from the creators Alshua and Rox. Essentially vie for council seats in the court by spending grandeur currency for a bunch of unique buffs and ancillaries. Every faction would have strengths and weaknesses in the court, but overall Tyrion would probably be the strongest and Sea Lord Eataine the weakest. The only thought I have is that perhaps the Pheonix Court is only available to factions in the vicinity of Ulthuan, much like the Empire's Elector Counts mechanic, so this may at least initially exclude Eataine, Imric, Elith, or Caradryan. It should include Teclis for the White Tower of Hoeth, Tyrion for the Council of Nobles, Alarielle for the Evercourt, and Altharion for the Court of Yervis. But on to the sea-themed mechanics, because lorefully, High Elves are the preeminent navy of the world, and currently that flavor just isn't there. Whilst Cathay has caravans and Chaos Dwarfs have convoys, High Elves should have the sea trade version of that very same mechanic. These voyages would be led by the new Commodore Lord and would feature growing an army as it delivers cargo to different locations for unique rewards. Not much else to say on it other than check out the Caravans of the New World mod by T. William to see this brought to life in the current game. Which brings us to Dragonships, which would be a similar mechanic to Black Arcs, though they are closer in size to the Vampire Coast flagships, which is to say they shouldn't feel quite as massive in their building construction options, not to be confused with the Norse longships also called Dragonships or Wolf ships. A Dragonship is the most powerful vessel employed by the High Elf Navy of Ulthuan. Only starwood from the forest of Anara Draconis, where starwood trees grew twice as thick and half again as tall as normal, were used to build hulls of the Dragonships. The wood bleeds resin that glitters like shimmering gold, making the hull resemble the scales of dragon. Since Anara Draconis was burned down by the Dark Elves during the Sundering, no new dragon ships will ever be built again. The loss of even one is a tragedy, and epic sagas are sung in the ship's honor when such a tragedy occurs. Thus, those ships only go to sea for war and never for missions of peace or of less importance. Only silver-helmed High Elf nobles are selected to join the crew. They frequently have to vie for their place on board during ritual contests of arms. The Dragonship towers above even the mighty Eagle ship. The mere rumor of its main weapon, the Dragon Blade, causes sailors of other races to shudder. Forged in ancient days, long before the Sundering, dragon blades are forged from true silver, an adamant and steel alloy heated in the breath of great dragons, molded by the mighty spells of high mages, it may be the hardest substance in the mortal world. They are adorned with potent runes inlaid from the Elder Days, and most men can be driven insane merely by looking at them. Each of the twin prows of the dragon ship is set with a dragon blade, forming a ram capable of slicing through another ship's hull like a knife through butter, shattering them completely. So think of this as a black arc cracker and the most potent weapon to battle such. So they wouldn't have these huge magical bombardments like the black arc does. They would probably have one army ability that has maybe 5 uses of Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower Strafing Run essentially, and the other 2 army abilities could be say 1 summon of a merworm and 1 summon of a dragon for any army in the dragon ship's sphere of influence. Because these dragon ships were armed, again, with Eagle Claw bolt throwers as their artillery, and then also housed dragons that would fly around and protect the ship, and it would also make sense that they could maybe summon a merworm or 2. So to sum up how they would work in Total War, dragon ships are sea-locked, horde-style pseudo-settlements, but closer to the size of a vampirate flagship, much like Dark Elves should get a unique Black Arc Fleet Master. These dragon ships would be led by unique Commodores, the Lord version of a Sea Helm. This Commodore and Fleet Master need to be FLC, as they should be available to the whole race and not locked behind DLC. The Dragon Blade of the ship may cause leadership and vigor penalties when a dragon ship is attacking, but not when defending. Dragon ships are also supposed to be rare, so I would make recruiting them as such. You can get 1 per tier 3 colony you own, or perhaps a tier 5 major port such as Lothern. Sea Lord Aisling may have an exclusive right to unlock more, though. You should be able to recruit any and all sea-themed and dragon units from the dragon ship, where other armies could recruit from its sphere of influence is debatable because they shouldn't be as powerful as Black Arcs. I think they are rare enough that you also don't want them to feel weak either. So I say give it to them. So then I will start the individual Lord reworks with Alarielle. As far as Elithanar, Eltharion, and Imric, I think besides maybe a few tweaks, they are solid and don't need any major reworking. Unlike Tyrion and Teclis, Alarielle has some unique mechanics, with a lingering bonus effect to regions she visits and the Defender of Ulthuan. The latter meaning as Chaos grows stronger, Avalorn grows weaker, and vice versa, get control of the donut and dominate. But in a previous video, I suggested Joseph Bugman should have a similar lingering effect, but with the added ability that he can reinforce any ally under attack in a region that is under that effect, no matter where his army currently is. Well, what if you just gave that ability to her as well, now that the thematic teleports are being added more frequently as of late? I think that would be the cherry on top. But the whipped cream under that would be to add Draika's system of recruiting forest spirits and wild beasts. This could be the new place to recruit dryads, treekin, and treemen, but also thematic wild beasts. So instead of giant wolves, you get war lions of Shrace. Instead of cave bats, you get dragonlings, which are essentially baby dragons. Instead of giant spiders, you get wild stags. Instead of great hawks, you get swift feather rocks. Instead of feral manticores, you get a great eagle. Instead of feral bears, you get zotes. If those changes were made for Alarielle, honestly, Avalorn could become my favorite High Elf faction. But then we go to Tyrion and Teclis, who are void of any real unique mechanics. The most obvious and simple solution is to give them the exact same treatment as Karl Franz and Balthazar Gelt. Tyrion would get something similar to Karl's electoral machinations, where you could spend one of your currencies on unique campaign actions. After a cooldown, you can use them again. The effects I would actually keep very similar to Karl's, except anything dealing with the electoral counts can be changed to affect the Pheonix Court and/or Ulthuan in general. Additionally, I think Eataine should start their campaign with 2 additional characters. The current Phoenix King maybe doesn't fit in Total War as a legendary lord, though I could see it happening. But what about as a pseudo? Finubar the Seafarer, I think, should be the unique legendary Commodore lord leading the Dragonship that will be sitting outside of Lothern on the first turn of Tyrion's campaign. This is also how I think the Hellbane should work, with Anethra as the legendary lord and Doriath as the Black Ark Fleetmaster. Finubar, in his earlier years, went on countless voyages to all corners of the world, often leaving his realm and the Pheonix Court unattended. Though the volume of his voyages has lessened and become more sporadic by the time of Total War, I think he fits perfectly as a unique Commodore lord for Tyrion. Other notes on Finubar is that he is touched by the flame of Assyrian, which in his words means you spend your life in the presence of a god. He also has a curved blade made of star metal that was gifted to him by the Raja of Ind. When a word of power is spoken by the wielder, it erupts in burning light. Besides this, Korhil Lionmane should start in his army as his bodyguard and personal champion, aka a pseudo-legendary hero. The White Lions of Thrace would also be his go-to unit as well. Besides buffs to White Lions, he should overall be the best Commodore, buffing sea units and his Dragonship, and also give some benefits, of course, to the Pheonix Court mechanic. Teclis, as mentioned, should get basically the same mechanics as Balthazar Gelt. Instead of the Colleges of Magic, he has the White Tower of Hoeth. Instead of separate colleges, there would be separate vaults or libraries for each of the 8 winds of magic. And an additional 9th page for high magic, or perhaps even a 10th page for the lore of mists. Each page would have 3 unique repeatable actions and 2 unique single-use actions based on that lore of magic. The first repeatable would instantly recruit a mage hero of the respective lore, the second a lore-relevant army ability, the third granting the lore-relevant cataclysm spell. In the case of the 9th page being the lore of high magic, instead of a cataclysm spell, you can select Teclis or any army led by an archmage and teleport them to any other region you own. With all the teleport mechanics coming to different lords, I think you have to give some to Lore Master Teclis. Though of course this teleport could also work for the 10th possible page, the Lore of Mists. Perhaps some alternatives could look like for high magic, you could put on one army, the targeted army, you could put like Zinc shields on them. For mists, maybe you could just summon a storm dragon, which I'll talk about later. But speaking of teleport mechanics, I think an early game buddy mechanic, similar to how Gelt has with Zhao Ming, could also help explain the adventure Teclis is currently on halfway across the world. His closest neighbors in his current start position would be Krokgar of the Lizardmen and Thoric Ironbrow for the Dwarves. If any High Elf would be trying to improve relations with those races, it would probably be Teclis. Though maybe you could argue for Sea Lord Aisling or Imric being the ally, since both are within proximity in the Sea of Dread. Since this comes along with the Sea Lord's DLC, maybe you just have to help Aisling regain control of the eastern colonies and destroy some different enemies between them in that sea region. At the end of this series of missions and dilemmas, you can decide to stay where you are or move Teclis home to Safari and Althwan. So yeah, Teclis should essentially have the exact High Elf copy-paste of Balthazar's campaign and mechanics. So as I did with my Dark Elf video, I'm going to split my High Elf video into 2 parts, so the rest of this video will continue to focus on the FLC, and the next video will be all the DLC stuff. So I think, of course, Sea Lord Acelin should be the 7th Legendary Lord slot for the High Elves. I think there's 2 options for the 8th and final Legendary Lord slot. The first being Finubar, the other option being Caradryan, who could also work as a legendary hero, but I'm going to propose him as the 8th, as I already did Finubar. Caradryan is captain to the Pheonix Guard and may even bring the Anointed of Asuryan, a generic lord. He rides the ancient frost-hard Pheonix Ashtari, wielding a flame-wreathed halberd. The Mark of Asuryan may give him the Flame Spire resurrection ability, or perhaps a death hex similar to Tamarkan, which will bring him back to life. He is known to have premonitions and has been accused of manipulating the future, so on the campaign may have a mechanic similar to Tzeentch's Changing of the Ways. He is also known to be a great defender of Ulthuan, so maybe just like you can gain the Imperial Authority mechanic for the Empire, perhaps High Elves can gain the Defender of Ulthuan mechanic if they enter Ulthuan. So in my Dark FLC video, I made the distinction of having more pseudo-legendary heroes, or like personal champions, so to speak. I've already said I would like Korhil to be faction-specific to Eataine, because he is Finubar's bodyguard. Wielding 2 giant axes, he would have lots of armor piercing as an anti-infantry powerhouse. He should have some type of guardian passive aura, buffing nearby lords, such as Finubar. For war gear, one of his axes is named Shael, or the Lion's Claw, and though this weapon is massive, it is said to be as light as a child's toy. He also wears the Pult of Sharandis, the great war lion of Shrase. He slew to become captain of the White Lions. Lastly, he should have a lion chariot of Shrase as his mount. I could see them adding Korhil as the paid legendary DLC hero, but again, personally, I want to make these distinctions of he should be a personal champion for Finubar specifically, but otherwise works as a legendary hero. Fenrian Stardrake and Altherin Stormrider could also be possible DLC lords, so I will talk about them in the next video. But for some honorable mentions as far as legendary heroes, Aminar could be a sensible free legendary hero. Merworm buffs merworms in defending Ulthuan and fighting at sea. Monster heroes are always a jam, but will ultimately probably just be a force of nature in the narrative, rather than playable. Eataine would be a legendary hero version of a lore master of Hoeth. Known as the Sword of Twilight, he wields an arcane sword known as Iron Cane. He seeks to slay Be'lakor in Mordheim. Again, an unlikely character, but interesting. Gilead Lothane has several novels dedicated to him. No matter how dated they may be, he would be a legendary hero version of a Shadow Warrior, or like a Lithanar. Though he fights with shield, bow, and sword, he is always accompanied through his many adventures by his fencing master Fithfael. The 2 would have synchronatic abilities such as Gotrek and Felix. And that should wrap up the High Elf FLC video part 1. I will link part 2 now, and hopefully you can go spend some time enjoying that one as well. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you